I remember seeing the knife, and I remember seeing both the attackers' hands with blood on them. I didn't actually see anything myself, no, not until I heard the scream. Anyway, the fact remains there can't have been anyone else at the carriage, or we all would have seen. Oh, lo and behold, the truth of the fact, not one of you was a witness to a crucial moment the crime was perpetrated. I apologize, my lord, but honestly, there was no one else inside the carriage, and the man's hands were covered in blood. That much incriminating evidence is tantamount to what we saw the man do it. That's really not what testimony is about. Let us examine the interior of the omnibus once more. The victim's fresh blood is clearly visible on the seat, though corroborating the witness's accounts. In other words, there is no substantial nor significant change in the facts of the case. Very well, your cross-examination, please, counsel. Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
No, the evidence tells us otherwise. We have the gloves the defendant was wearing on the night in question on the court record. I'm well aware of that, sir, but nevertheless, I know what I saw and I stand by it. The man has blood on both his hands. He's defiant even in the face of hard evidence. He's steadfastly refusing to admit that he might be mistaken about what he saw. But why? Your reasoning is dire. One hand or two, the salient point remains unchanged. Minutes after the grim crime, the victims were stripped guiltily from the accused's fingers. But you might say that I didn't see the exact moment the stabbing transpired, if that matters. It does matter. Don't try to downplay this. Whether or not you saw the exact moment of the crime is a matter of fundamental importance, as well you know. But for crying out loud, we all know that no one else could possibly have done it. It was just trying to save us some time. You have a loan of 20 guineas outstanding with the defendant, do you not? How do you hope to realize yourself in the financial burden by ensuring the defendant was found guilty? That's not entirely not what I was hoping for. I just lost a little guinea or 10 when I backed the wrong horse in a derby, that's all. I was going to win it all back. There's a fixture this weekend, and I'm sure there's a thing. A little guinea or 10. I'm a banker. No one bats an eye if I borrow a little spending money for the weekend. I think you may have revealed rather more about your character than you bargained for, sir. Witness scruples are not a trial here. Proceed to the next witness. Is that really how it's supposed to work?
Hold it!
You definitely saw that too. Blood on both hands. Yes, sir. I mean, I know what you're going to say. Only one of Mr. McGill's gloves has any signs of blood on it. That's right. The thing is, as far as I remember, sir, when I looked down and saw Mr. McGill sitting beside the other fellow, I don't believe he was wearing any gloves, sir. He wasn't wearing these gloves. That's correct, sir. And I saw the blood on both his bare hands quite clearly. It's true that the dark-colored stain on the dark leather gloves would have been easy to see. I should point out that the police officer who was apprehended and accused on the night in question reported that there was no trace of blood on Mr. McGill's gloved hands. There wasn't blood on his hands. This is a puzzling indeed. Must be significant somehow. I'm sure of it. Not until I heard that scream. You didn't see anything. Yes, sir. That's to say, no, sir, I didn't. Very sorry about what I said before, sir. Very sorry, yes. It was very wrong of me to make up stories and say what I saw him stab the man. Wouldn't you agree, sir? I know what you're insinuating, but I certainly wasn't making up stories. Still, to say you saw nothing isn't right either, is it? No, sir, I saw nothing at all. Mr. Beppo, you were driving your horses. At the very least, you must have enjoyed a good view of London streets, no? Oh, please, you didn't even see that? It was so cold that night, you see. I was all I could do to keep from passing out, sir. Yeah, my head was fairly frozen solid, sorry to say, sir. It would seem prudent to avoid travel on the last omnibus service of London's cold winter nights. Beppo!
Hold it!
And everything you saw of the incident was through the skylight on the roof of the omnibus. That's right, it was fiercely cold that night, but the glass wasn't frosted over. Yes, I remember shivering, it was so bitter. Wait, what? Which rather begs the question of why the pair of you were sitting on the roof deck in the first place. Well, I don't know about this young fellow, but I couldn't enter the cabin. Oh, why not? It was locked from the inside. I tried knocking, but no one opened the door. It was locked. That's right, and it's public bus service, for pity's sake. That's not what I call fair play. Yes, I had exactly the same experience. I tried knocking, but the gent inside was just assured me to clear off. I had no chance to climb up to the roof deck and look down longingly into the warm cabin below. I'm going to assure you I wasn't just looking down, I was glaring long and hard. That's precisely why I can tell you with absolute confidence that if there wasn't anyone else at all in the cabin, I would have noticed. Unequivocal, I would say. I'm not sure about these two witnesses. Could they really have seen everything inside the cabin through skylight? They might not. That's impossible. Allow me to confirm one thing, Mr. Fairplay. You were riding this omnibus and witnessing the events in the cabin through the skylight on the floor of the upper deck. Is that right? That's right, yes. In that case, there is a portion of the cabin interior that would have been out of sight from you. What? By golly, really? Obviously, at this stage, we can't say for sure. But the possibility cannot be denied. If that at the time of the incident, there could have been another passenger in the closed cabin of the omnibus.
Objection!
I was thinking that if that chair in front was the other way, we would have had a trouble. But because that one faces forward, they can't see the back two seats. Prosecution demands that you substantiate your claims. After all, the scene of the crime is here, in the flesh. Very well, I will uphold the prosecution's demand. You will identify the area on this cross-sectional portion of the omnibus. Where exactly in the omnibus are you suggesting that the potential extra passenger could have been situated?
Take that!
Right there. Both rows of seats on the roof face the direction of travel, whereas the seats in the enclosed cabin face each other, which means the visible part of the cabin which passengers on the roof deck can see through the skylight is as if drawn here. That's right, my lord. As you can see, the seat opposite to the one in which the victim had its attacker were sitting is obscured from view. In other words, if someone had been sitting on that seat, it's quite possible that the witnesses would have been completely unaware of it.
Objection!
It's quite possible some phantom was sitting there. You Nipponese have a forbidding habit of obscuring the truth with ambiguity. I concur with the prosecution's rejoinder. In a British court of law, evidence is paramount. I cannot entertain this conjecture, counsel. That is, unless you're able to put a name to this mysterious passenger who you elude. Definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted on our first day in London. Well, nothing will come out of grumbling now. No. By the way, Mr. McGill right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with the coin on his right hand a little earlier. Ah, pity. If only he had been left-handed. I think blood on either glove would be fairly incriminating, really. That's, some important shit. This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubs, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway. I was hoping to find some sort of like extra clue here. It's like a marking or something. Can you, Mr. Naruhodo? Honestly, don't know who could have been. Who could have been in the other seat, which was out of sight from the witnesses at the roof deck? I don't know. I'm gonna grab a cup of water real quick. Give me a sec. Not pop this time. So if you redeem water, you're wasting your money. Not as much as a hint as I would rather ask, can this person be found out right now? With all the evidence I have right now. The two witnesses were definitely upstairs. Sorry. Oh yes, I just don't really like blades. Those don't seem like the words of a man with a large katana slung from his waist. That's not a blade, that's a Kazuma's soul. Anyway, there's no sense in delaying it. Let's see what the blade looks like. Oh, that looks like a lot like blood. Surely it's blood of the victims. An Englishman's blood looks a lot like Japanese men's blood. Did you think it wouldn't? Sorry, it's just that we've only just arrived here in Great Britain. I'm finding it a little hard to adjust. Yes, I do understand. An ornate letter M, undelivered Mr. Magnus McGill's initial. It's beautifully gilded too. It must be very valuable, I should think. Ah, what is it? Look at this M. If you turn it upside down, it becomes a W. This could change everything. A W. Yes, this is one of those, you know, turnabout cases. I'm sure of it. I'm afraid I don't know what at all. But what I'm sure of is this is an M. Oh, well, that idea was quickly quashed. I think it was the defendant. Understand, my lord. The defense would like to put forward a name. You are a fool. No notion of his own limitations. A toast to hard lessons not yet learned. Let us not delay, counsel. The defense is still to name the passenger in the other seat. This could be it. This could be a chance I've been waiting for this trial in my favor. On that night, on the night of the murder, the person occupying the seat in the omnibus cabin that is obscured from view was...
Take that!
The passenger in the enclosed cabin that was witnesses to the roof deck failed to see. Had to have been Mr. Magnus McGildred. Mick? Gildred? What are you talking about, counsel? That's the name of the defendant.
Objection!
Holy fuck! If I desecrate this chamber by smashing my hallowed chalice, do forgive the discourtesy. Lord Von Zykes, people talk of these tiny island nations in Far East as having learning and culture of their own. But I see they use the terms ill-advisedly. What are you trying to say? Let me explain in terms that even a student of artless backwaters such as yourself might understand. When the bloody scene unfolded, the victim and his assailant were sitting side by side. Multiple witnesses have attested to that fact. It is the very premise on which this case is built.
Objection!
But the premise may be wrong. What? If the victim really was sitting beside Mr. McGildred, it creates an inconsistency that can't be reconciled in any way. What inconsistency, counsel? The defendant's gloves, my lord. Both witnesses made the same testimony. They claim that there was blood on both hands of the person sitting next to the victim.
Objection!
Yet we know the truth to be otherwise. Only one glove bears the gory remains.
Objection!
The point is, even in the face of this irrefutable evidence, both witnesses have maintained their stance. Yes, their testimony remains unchanged. Exactly, they both adamantly swear that they clearly remember seeing blood on both hands of the assailant. In short, their memory of events is correct, and their testimony reveals the truth. If somebody else was sitting beside the victim that night, a third party we have yet to identify, and the victim's blood on their passenger's hands, both of them.
Objection!
And who was this third party? We don't know. Obviously, the true culprit. Extraordinary. Order, order, order. What exactly are you postulating?
Objection!
The defense's postulation is just that. Nothing more than conjecture. The witnesses have clearly stated that they saw the accused.
Objection!
But when elaborating on his testimony, Mr. Fairplay said the two of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. Yes. The tops of their heads were obscured by the roof. I could see the rest of them, though. Yes, that's right. Both gents were almost certainly hatted. Hatters do tend to notice such things, sir. And what particular styles of hat did the two gentlemen sport, Mr. First? I'm afraid I don't remember. And you call yourself a hatter. The style of hat makes no difference. There was no third passenger in that cabin. How can you be so sure? Because if there had been, the accused, Mr. McGilded, would undoubtedly have offered to dispose the fact. Unless, that is, you are proposing an even more preposterous explanation. That the accused failed to even notice the presence of a true culprit in the very cabin in which he traveled. He's right. If there was another person traveling in the enclosed cabin of the omnibus, it's inconceivable that Mr. McGilded would have been unaware of it. Order, there is clearly a simple solution to this problem. Bring the accused, Mr. McGilded, to the stand. Well, what say you, counsel? Prosecution objects, my lord. On what grounds? As a suspect, he will have already made a full statement to the police. But what if there's some reason why he's unable to speak freely? Magnus McGilded is no uneducated ruffian. If it is indeed turns out that the man has been withholding information, you can be sure it will have been a most deliberate act. Counsel of the defense, what is your opinion? My lord. You know, I'm demanding that testimony. Yes, we need to hear what he has to say in order to find out the truth. The defense would like to call Mr. McGilded to the stand. In that case, I would like to hear the opinion of the jury. Yes, sir. I need a little time to consider this. If you ask me, I think we should hear what Mr. McGilded has to say. Get the man out here, I say. It would be utterly illogical not to hear his testimony. When something needs doing, get it done. That's how I run things at a guild. Hearing what the patron of my favorite little park has to say? Oh yes, that would be lovely. Yes, the jury says the man must be heard. Are him and the old lady a thing? The court will hear the defendant's testimony. Bailiff shall defendant to the stand at once. Now, maybe what actually happened that night will finally become clear. Let proceedings be resumed. Mr. McGilded, have you been listening to the discourse of the day? To be sure, I have, my lord. There are now two matters on which the court desires to hear from you. The first is whether or not there was a third party with you in the omnibus cabin, as proposed by the defense. The second is that if such a person was indeed present, why did you conceal that fact from the police? Begod, no, it's not my nature to hide anything at all. Just answer the questions, please. The truth of the matter is, I've been desperate about this all along. Do I tell y'all or keep my mouth shut? Tell us what, Mr. McGilded? We have a fly. I'm closing my window. That shirt's going in the laundry like it always was. The fine fellow representing me is absolutely right. In the carriage on the night with myself and the other man, there was not another passenger. Is it true? Aye, and 'twas me who helped the little urchin get away after it all happened. You? What? No, Magnus McGilded. That convenient excuse can't save you now. I'm truly sorry, I am, Lord Van Zeeks. I'm sure you'll be wanting to know why I said nothing when I was taken in by the police. I do be having a very good reason, I assure you. Which was... Well, the little child was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and no way, not in any way involved, you see. What? If the police had known the wee one was there, they'd have assumed she'd done it. They'd have hauled her into this here courtroom just like myself. I was only trying to spare her that. Young hearts and young minds are easily damaged, my lord. And who is this young child of whom you speak? That I don't know. You don't know? Aye, well, the wee thing just happened to be in the carriage that night. I never saw her before or since.
Objection!
We have absolutely no reason to believe this man. The prosecution calls for the witness's statements to be disregarded by this court. You know, I wouldn't be so surprised if the urchin is in here in this courtroom as we speak, listening to the proceedings. What? What is going on? Be careful now, Hodo. Cover your face. Bailiff, don't let the accused escape. Secure the omnibus. I hereby call emergency recess. Bailiff, ensure the defendant is in custody and cleared in my courtroom. We were hurriedly removed from the smoke-filled courtroom by the bailiff. Amid scenes of chaos as people stumbled over one another in their desperation to flee the chamber. We had no idea what was happening. All we knew was that, for the time being at least, the trial was suspended. Interesting. Interesting. What on earth happened in there? Naruhodo, I managed to find out what happened. Mrs. Sato, I was told it was an advanced form of smoke grenade, a type of exploding device that releases smoke. Smoke grenade? It sounds like the sort of thing ninjas use. They're just making sure everything is safe now. I think the trial will start again before long. But who would have done something like that? The police managed to catch someone who was trying to flee the car room, apparently. Flee the car room? Why? Well, it's a young girl around 15, I hear. A young girl, then. Could it be the other passenger Mr. McGildred was talking about? My thoughts exactly. So he wasn't lying. Oh, what's become of Mr. McGildred, actually? There are so many things I need to ask him about, but he's not here. He was summoned to the prosecutor's antechamber to answer questions, along with the young girl. Who is she, I wonder? What is she even doing here at the trial? She was taking a huge risk, and for what possible benefit to herself? There's another matter that's troubling me. What's that? The 20 pence. Oh, yeah. According to the coachman, Mr. Beppo, he took 4 passengers that night, the fare of 5 pence each. That comes to a total of 25. But now it seems we're in fact 5 passengers, which means the figures don't seem to add up again. She's right. That is strange. Counsel for defense, kindly proceed to the courtroom. The trial will recommence in 5 minutes. Oh, thank you, officer. We'll go in straight away. Well, whoever she is, I imagine this young girl will be asked to take the stand and testify now. I really can't imagine what she's going to say, but it could alter the whole direction of the trial. We'll know soon enough, Mrs. Sato. I also wonder if this 15-year-old is small enough to actually fit inside the bottom of the chair. Okay. There's the young girl next to Mr. McGildred. Look. She must have been the one who caused the disturbance before. Well, after that rather eventful recess, the court will now resume the trial of Mr. Magnus McGildred. Now then, Lord Van Zieks. My lord, I believe you have established the cause of the smoke which veiled proceedings earlier. It seems to have been an advanced form of smoke grenade, or the sort typically employed by an army. Good gracious, the army. What in the devil's name? An elaborate attempt by a young girl to cloak her escape from the public gallery. But she was caught. And now occupies a stand. Your name, girl. Are you responsible for the smoke grenade which induced such pandemonium here in my courtroom? What does it mean to the deplorable behavior? Ahem, if I may, my lord. Yes, Mr. McGildred. I think perhaps I ought to explain here. Why is that the wee last year was here in the first place, and why she tried to bolt like that? It is all tied up with the events of that night, so it is. Very well, Mr. McGildred, give your testimony. You will explain to the court exactly how this young woman has been involved in the case. Just what did happen that night? It's not like a defense lawyer needs that information or anything. On the night in question, I took the back seat in the omnibus and promptly nodded off. Then, begrah, the loud thud and the wee scream woke me up at the fair start. There was a fella collapsed on the floor at me feet as I sat up on the seat across from me. Then I turned to find out it was the scream had come from, and bless my soul, what did I find? There was a child in there, all curled up in a ball, hiding her wee self away. I remained somewhat baffled, I confess. From what I gather, on the night in question, the young girl was indeed riding the omnibus. Is that correct? It is exactly as the defense counsel said. Last was the 5th passenger, my lord. Very well, the defense may now cross-examine the witness. Are you ready, counsel? Yes, my lord. Or rather, no. I have no idea where to start.
Hold it!
And when you first got in the omnibus, were there any other passengers already on board? There were not. The cabin was empty, and there was no one in the roof deck either. You were the first passenger, as it were. I see. Aye, and that's why I took the backside as I did. The most comfortable, so it is. Could you explain exactly what you mean by the back seat? By all means, this is how you already described it earlier. I'm talking about the seat opposite in the one which the poor gentleman who was stabbed was sitting. Like I said, this is the most comfortable and where I feel most at ease. And of course, I enjoy gazing through the skylight from time to time as well. Then Begura, a loud thud with wee scream woke me up at the fair start. A loud thud, you say, and a scream. Aye, that's right. How can I explain it? 'Twas like the sound of someone falling to the ground, the sort of noise. So you think it was the sound of Mr. Mason falling on the floor, having been stabbed. Well now, you'll remember I was asleep at the time, so I wouldn't like to say. And when the sound woke me up after I opened my eyes, there wasn't a soul to be seen in the carriage but the fella on the floor. You didn't see anyone, but at the same moment you did hear a scream. The seat's above you on the roof deck, I presume. Not above me, no, my lord. It was on the inside of the cabin. But I wasn't altogether thinking about that scream. No, I was too started to a desperate sight before my eyes. There was a fella collapsed on the floor at me feet, so I sat him across the seat from me. You sat him up, the victim, you mean? That I did, on the seat across from me, as I said. I could plainly see the poor devil was already gone, and you wouldn't leave a dead man just lying on the floor now, would you? It's common courtesy, so it is. I find that a little hard to believe. Lord Van Zieks, now why would that be? You wake up to find a man lying dead at your feet in the carriage. Any normal person would have hailed the cabman. Instead, upstanding member of the London Society, that is, Well, now, as you know, I am in something of a special line of business. The business of lending money at exorbitant rates of interest. Unfortunately, my lord, not everyone is thankful for the help I offer them, and some would even see me dead. So I do try, where at all possible, to avoid getting myself in a tangle with trouble. Are you suggesting that you were going to leave the man there? Heavens alive, no, I was already intending to report it, so I was. Only I had a mind to find out why and wherefores first. Oh, whys and wherefores? Right you are. There were some details I wanted to understand before anyone else got to meddling. That was a scream I heard, for example. Wouldn't your good self do just the same? Yes, the scream, he says, he heard at the same time as the thud of the victim, collapsing. Then I turned to find out where that scream had come from, and bless my soul, what did I find? There was a child in there, all curled up in a ball, hiding herself away. I do wonder how you must be feeling, Mr. Naruhodo, being the defendant's lawyer, and yet finding myself as stunned as everyone else at this testimony. Let's just say it's trying. We certainly had precious little time to talk to McGildred before this trial. But we mustn't be despaired. We must try to learn all the facts we can. Huh, when we arrived in London this morning, I didn't see my day planning out just like this. Naruhodo, no grumbling, even in your head. How did you know?
Hold it!
And when you first got into the omnibus, were there any other passengers already on board? Oh, it's just... Well, this bloodstain is so obvious, that's all. And yet Van Zix has made no mention of it. Suppose that does seem a little strange. Why do I have such a bad feeling about this? How did I not even notice that? Today's trial was brought to you by Hitbox. I'm joking. I'm not sponsored by them. Fuck. I was wondering how I didn't notice the blood stain, but how did... Whatever evidence was in there before, I think it was useless. Right? Whatever in there was just junk. Essential junk. Right? Whatever's in the bag. However, we desperately want to put her in that box and have her fit there. But where did the blood come from? That's my question. There was stuff in there. Yeah, of course there was stuff in there. We looked at it. I'm trying to think of what I put where. What I want to do is, if he nodded in the back seat, how did she fit? That child couldn't have been there.
Objection! Hold it! Hold it!
I'm afraid I don't understand. I'm sure you told the court that there was no one else in the carriage except yourself and the victim. So I did, sir. So I did. As far as I could see, that is. What do you mean by that? Well, now, 'tis a queer thing. The wee scream I heard when I woke up. It came from, if you'll excuse the vulgar expression, under me backside. Good gracious. Under your backside? When I looked at the seat on which I'd been sitting, I found there was a wee cubbyhole there for storage. We can examine the omnibus ourselves, remember? Yes, of course. The whole bus was submitted as evidence. This would be a very good time to have a thorough look around inside. And that's when I found her. How is she curled up in a ball?
Hold it!
Aye, that's right. It was hard to see in the dim lamplight, but she was all curled up in a wee ball. When our eyes met, well, my heart nearly stopped beating in me chest. You're really overreacting. Still and all, I pulled her out from under there and sat her on the seat opposite so I could have a wee cheat wag with her. The seat opposite? The one where the guy murdered? Yeah, just next to the dead gentleman there. You sat this young girl next to a corpse, sir. Well, as I'm sure I mentioned, a gentleman in my position can often find himself in mortal danger. So, I needed to find out just who this urchin was, you see. And while I was in the middle of talking with her, I heard another scream, a fella's voice at the time. Presumably, scream was from Mr. First, who was sitting on the roof deck seats. Right you are again, I would say, sir. Looking down through the skylight, he must have seen this young girl and gentleman with the knife in his belly. In other words, the previous witnesses did not, in fact, see you at all, Mr. McGildred. What they believed to be yourself and the victim was, in fact, this girl and the late Mr. Mason. Aye, my lord. I was, as I think everyone understands now, sat at the back of the carriage out of sight. It is certainly plausible. The defendant is somehow diminutive in stature. And readily confused, perhaps, with this young girl. After that, of course, with the scream of the gentleman over us, the driver realized something was wrong and pulled up the horses. Thank you. I've heard enough. The events as explained are clear in my mind. However, at least one conundrum remains. Who is the girl? Her name is Gina Lestrade, my lord. She's a chancer, earns her crust among large crowds, relieving people of their purses. What's commonly called a pickpocket. What? This girl here? A petty thief? Is this true, Miss Lestrade? Miss Lestrade, you will answer the question. Holy shit! How dare you? What is the meaning of this? Ah, the girl. She's gone. Open your eyes. I'm over here. Good gracious, how? What was the point in that little sidestep? I know what you lot are thinking. Grown-ups are all the same. The sturdy little dipper, you say, slipped up and got caught in a job. She got herself backed into a corner, so she knifed the gent. Go on, that's what's in your heads, ain't it? I don't think that at all. Not at all. This is the court of law. We're here to determine the truth, not the cast. Look, knives are for cowards. Only thugs use weapons like that. All I do for what I do is these fingers. I'm a professional, all right. Maybe not in your eyes, but I got pride in what I do. Let me guess. You don't count smoke guns among weapons for thugs. Oh, this? Yeah, this wasn't a bag I lifted the other day, down where they keep with the four-wheel drags. It's nice, isn't it? I like the pink best. Ah, do not wave that thing in my direction again. So, you admit that you were riding the omnibus on the night in question. "'Tis all right, lass. You can tell them the truth now." All right, yeah. I just like the Irishman. It's just like the Irishman said. The court accepts this girl, Miss Gina Lestrade, as a valid and significant witness in this case. Accordingly, young lady will now hear testimony, if you please. You will retell the court exactly what happened in the omnibus that night in question. All right, if I have to. So I snuck inside the carriage before they hooked up the horses, just like always. But it was a right old waste of time. I got nothing to show for me troubles that night. I'll tell you can't see a blind thing in that hiding place. It's pitch in there. Then, after a while, I hear this loud bang. Nearly jumped out of me skin, I did. And that scream just came out. Because of that, Swell found me. It did help me get away, mind. Yes, he let you go. So, by now we've realized with all my Phoenix Wright court shenanigans that it's very... I'm actually in two different directions right now. But all the previous Phoenix Wright games, there's always like a blame the child notion I've always had. And unfortunately, one of my two things actually blames the child. Option A is it's the banker. The banker has a cane and was able to somehow stab the victim through it. Like, I think both guys, right? Actually, no, that's different. If the banker did it silently and somehow... Give me 1 second, 1 second. Thought process. The banker hit the guy from up top. That would mean they were sitting on two different sides of the benches. The blonde-haired guy was in the front while the other guy was in the back. The blonde-haired guy looked back, and the Englishman up front, he stabbed the one guy with the M on the logo and then disappeared up the window and did it without being seen, right? Meanwhile, at the bottom of the carriage, our man is actually sleeping at the bottom. Like, all three are actually talking in some way, shape, or form. Or the girl and the other guy are talking. Girl and the victim are talking. And when the guy stabbed him, right? Oh, no, that's different. Never mind. That doesn't work out. Shit, I think it's the girl. I think it's the girl, and the whole smoke bomb thing was an elaborate ruse to somehow pin the blame on someone else. Because, yeah, the big thump puts them standing, which is really weird. So it's either the girl and our current defendant is trying to cover for said girl, or there's some connection happening with the current victim with the girl or with one of the other guys. I need more evidence. I don't understand why you would let the street urchin... Oh, it is simplicity itself, my lord. You see, she couldn't possibly have killed the other passenger. I knew that for a fact. How? As I'm sure I said before, sir. She is under him. I was sitting right on top of the place where she was hiding herself. I think a demonstration is called for. This is where I was sat that night, and the cubbyhole of which you have to spoken is underneath this seat, I presume. Yes, it does appear just large enough to accommodate someone of a girl's stature. Aye, but of course the wee lash is stuck in there, because I parked myself in the seat of that duration. No, that's not true. So you see, that's why I let the lash bolt. I knew that if the police found her there, they'd automatically assume she'd done it. But I couldn't live with myself if a young life was ruined when all the time I knew she was innocent. Even though you must have realized your action would result in your own innocence being called into question? Not at all, my lord, not at all. I knew in my own heart that I was innocent. So I thought it was worth taking a punt at my own good name for the sake of this less fortunate lass. What a perfect gentleman. My lord, this is a fine example of a man who cannot possibly be guilty of a heinous crime like this. I'm ashamed of myself for ever doubting you, sir. With calm, calculated reasoning, one arrives clearly at a truth every time. Saints alive! All 6 members of the jury consensually learning to the verdict of not guilty. It's an autohodo this. Well, it must mean what? That we're victorious. This doesn't feel right. We've won? Are you sure?
Objection!
Thank you. Even I felt like this was... Ooh. Come on in, foot lovers. We got yellow feet, black feet. You ever watch Dusk Till Dawn, then you'll get my reference there. If the plain sight of my iron-headed Wellington offends, pray do forgive his discourtesy. Really is a consummate example of the one monumental flaw in British judicial practices. When evidence and reasoning should be paramount, emotion ruins the day. Emotion. The witness' latest statement gives us a clear insight into his true nature. What do you mean, his true nature? Do you really think Scotland Yard would have made such a glaring omission? After the incident, the omnibus was comprehensively searched by officers of the police. Obviously, the interior of this cubbyhole, as the witness put it, was included in their investigation. The compartment under the posterior seat was full of the coachman's belongings. It is noted in black and white here in the police report. Good lord. The evidence has been tampered with in order to corroborate Mr. McGildred's story. Someone has unlawfully removed everything from under the seat. Thank you for pointing it out. I'm actually on Van Zeek's side here. Something is fishy. The bloodstain was also not there. What? Order, order. How could such a devious contrivance possibly have been effected, counsel? Naturally, we must acknowledge the deficiencies of the constabulary allowing this to have happened. However, I assure you, when the omnibus was wheeled into the courtroom this morning, the compartment under the seat was not empty. Well, mind up on his friend? Me? When the carriage was submitted as evidence, doubtless examined and finally detailed as Winnie himself, respecting practitioner of the law. Pray, what did you find in the condition of the underseat compartment to be? Oh, to be sure, the young gentleman will be able to clear this up in a jiffy. Sorry? Go ahead. You tell the court now, fella. How is this all an elaborate excuse by the desperate Lord Van Zykes? Well, counsel, do you have something to say on this matter? How am I supposed to answer? What can I say about the state of that little compartment under the seat in the omnibus? It was not empty. I really don't know if giving this answer is helping my case out of counsel for the defense. But, as far as I remember at least, when I first examined the compartment, I'm fairly certain that there was a number of articles inside it, yes. Are you sure, counsel? Ah, bewitched! What are you saying now, you daft draw? I thought you were on my side here. What game are you playing? Your task is to defend the man in the stand. Why would you say something to compromise his position? As the advocate for the defense in this trial, I confess I'm still not entirely sure where I stand. Oh my god.